Welcome, everyone. This is our second episode, and today we're going to be talking about transition. We're going to be talking about how do we get from point A to point B. Transition is one of the things that I specialize in and what we specialize in here at Real Talk. One of the things that I notice about transition is that it can happen to anyone. Everybody at some point of their life is going to be in transition. And when we're thinking about transition, it can be about anything. It can be about work. It can be with friends. It can be in relationships. It can be with your children. It can be with your family. It can be with your girlfriends. It can be with any domain in your life. One of the things that you have to think about when you're thinking about transition is how are you going to transition once you figure out that that's the space that you're in. The first thing I would like to talk about is having an awareness. You have to be aware that it is time for you to transition. Where are you in that process? Are you in the beginning stages? Are you in middle stage? Or are you in the end stage? And so the beginning stages of transition is having that awareness. What's going on? What do I not like? And what is it that I need to change? And so by having that awareness, you start to have a nagging feeling. You keep running up against something, running up against a wall, and you keep figuring out, why do I keep having this stumbling block? Why do I keep running up against this thing that I can't get past, right? And so then once you identify that awareness, you have to decide, how am I going to go about this? What do I need to change in my life? What do I need to shift so that I can get past this? Sometimes it's a matter of setting boundaries. Do I need to set boundaries with my family? Do I need to set boundaries with my friends? Do I need to set boundaries in relationships? Am I starting to recognize that I am attracting a certain type of people who always put me in a position to not be my best or my optimum, or I'm always pouring into them and they're not pouring into me? So I need to set a boundary. I need to be able to be in a reciprocal relationship with everyone. All of the relationships that I'm connected to should be healthy relationships. And if they're not healthy, how do I go about changing those relationships or removing myself from those relationships so that I can get to the place that I want to be in my life? And so oftentimes, if you don't have a lot of experience with setting boundaries, that can be very difficult. And so when you think about a boundary, what is a boundary? How do you set a boundary? What is it? And so basically a boundary is you determining what you will and will not go for, and then letting the people know around you what you will and won't go for. You can't keep it to yourself, because if you keep it to yourself, then it's not a boundary. It is a personal standard, right? And if you don't let the other people know what your personal standards are, then it's a moot point. So setting the boundary, letting the people who are important to you know what those boundaries are, and then implementing them is a great way to start your transition process, right? Another thing that happens when you're in transition, once you have that awareness, is making those behavioral changes. Just one off the top of my head is when we decide at the beginning of the year that we're going to start a new exercise regime, right? And so we say, okay, top of the year, that first day, we're going to join the gym and we're going to start working out every day, right? And we haven't worked out in years, but we're going to start working out every day. We're going to go to the gym. We're going to spend 2 hours in the gym and things from that perspective. Is that a realistic expectation that you're going to work out 7 days a week for 2 hours? I personally do not feel like that is a realistic expectation. One, you haven't set that as a habit for yourself. It's not something that you have done consistently in the past. So I don't know why you feel like that is a realistic expectation currently. I am of the belief that you should build slowly up to something. Because of the fact that you haven't worked out in a long time, if you go to the gym 2-3 days in a row for a couple of hours, you're going to be sore. And so then that soreness is going to cause you not to want to go back to the gym. And so when you take those next couple of days off because you're sore, then it's going to be that much harder to go back to the gym because your muscle memory is going to be, oh, well, when I did that before, I got this negative result. I got hurt, I got pain, I got soreness. So if you started slowly and said, okay, for the first week, I'm going to go 2, maybe 3 times for 30, 45 minutes and work my way up to the 7 days, that seems a little bit more feasible and a little bit more realistic so that you can build in this new habit that you want to acquire. And so when you're thinking about behavioral changes and shifts, don't operate from the extremes. I think that sometimes we want to do it all in. We want to do it instantly. We want to get the biggest bang for our buck, and we put ourselves in a position to not get the result because we're trying to do it all at one time. Another aspect of transition, we've talked about having an awareness. We've talked about the behavioral change. And then another one would be, how do we implement when we have been a people pleaser? And a lot of people talk about being people pleasers, but they may not necessarily know what being a people pleaser is. And so a people pleaser is a person who derives pleasure out of having to do for other people and making the other person feel good. So I'm not concerned about what makes me happy. I'm singularly focused on what makes you happy. So if you're happy, then I'm happy. And I am going to do everything in my power to make you happy. And therein lies, that's going to make me happy. But that's not how it works. I will keep giving. And then at some point, I'm going to be resentful of the fact that you're not doing the same or reciprocating to me. I'm not telling you what my needs are. I'm thinking that you're just going to meet my needs because I'm meeting all of your needs. And so when we think about that, that is a dangerous game to play. People pleasers are oftentimes very sacrificing to people, and are those people that you call on that are always available to do what you need them to do. And when you ask them, how can you reciprocate or how can you do, and they never ask you to do anything for them. Being a people-pleasing person, it's hard to get out of that because you never think about yourself. You have been conditioned to do for others. One of the things that we work with people who are people pleasers is for them to take a step back and say, what do you need? What is important to you? What do you need to make yourself feel good about yourself? Or what do you need to make yourself feel good about you? And as that person slowly begins to prioritize themselves, they can get out of that people pleasing and transition into prioritizing themselves. When we're thinking about transitioning and moving on to thriving in our life, you oftentimes have to figure out, what is the next transition for me? Is it going to be career? Is it going to be in my personal life? Is it going to be in my interpersonal relationships? Sometimes you transition everything at one time. Sometimes you transition things one thing at a time. And you have to be okay with that. Sometimes we may want one transition, we may want the relationship and marriage and the kids, but we're in a season where our career is thriving. Sometimes the career is not thriving, and we're like, we would have thought that we would have been promoted by now, but right now we're in the season where we're raising our kids, and the priority seems to be the family. Or it could be our friendships are thriving and we're pouring into those things. So you have to be okay with where you are, and you have to recognize the space that you're in and focus in on transitioning and leveling up in that transitional space so that you're aligned with it. Because if you're trying to force something in transition that is not ready to transition, you will end up with a lot of disappointments. Hopping jobs. I've seen a lot of people think that they're in their season from a career perspective, and they start focusing in on wanting to be a manager, not getting a promotion, jumping from one job to the next job, trying to get that managerial role when that's not the season that they're in, or going from relationship to relationship because they're ready to be married. And so if the person doesn't want to get married within 6 months to a year, then they're breaking up with the person instead of trying to develop to get to know the person, to see if the person is even marriage material. They're not concerned with what the relationship looks like. They're concerned with the end goal. And so they've lost sight of what the relationship dynamic is. They are just trying to hit their goal. And when you do that, you wind up getting yourself in a situation that causes more damage than what you expected it to be, because you were so focused in on hitting those goals. And so looking at transition as a positive thing and looking at transition as a way to elevate yourself is positive, as long as you're aligned with the type of transition that's going on in your life. So being in tuned with the trajectory of your life, knowing where you're going and not letting life happen to you. And let's just talk about that for a little bit, because some people operate from the perspective that they're just going to exist and life is going to happen. And it'll happen absolutely the way that they envision it to happen. And what I say is that no, it doesn't happen that way. You orchestrate it. You do have a hand in orchestrating how your life is going to happen. You can help curate your life by making good, sound decisions and being intentional about how your life is going to go. If you make impulsive decisions, you're going to get impulsive results. If you make bad decisions, you're going to get bad results. So if you make good decisions, then good things should happen. But that doesn't mean that life is going to always be easy. There's always going to be some speed bumps, and there's always going to be some conflict. It's just how you manage those speed bumps and how you manage that conflict, and be okay with that. Embrace the twists and turns in your life, because that's what makes you uniquely you, and that's what makes life so much fun. So just enjoy the ride. Enjoy the fact that you're in transition, because nobody wants to live a stagnant life. And if you are stagnant and stuck, it's time to get unstuck. So that is our episode for this week. So tune in to us in 2 weeks, and we will keep talking about how we're going to elevate our mindset.